All right, there are restrictions from time to time, but it's amazing the number that do come in. And when they come in, they bring something with them. They bring the culture they had before, and they add that to the mix. And then you ask, well, then what is an American now, today? Impossible to say. It's a projection, it's possibility. Americans are dedicated to the pursuit of happiness. Notice, not being happy, because that's an existing fixed state. It's pursuing happiness. It's the green light across the bay in The Great Gatsby, where Gatsby looks across and there is this glowing green light. Or at the end of that novel, he imagines the Dutch sailors first catching a glimpse of the American shoreline, and they see the green breasts of America, typical, again, a sexual image. But of course, as they get closer to the shore, they can no longer see the green breasts, they simply become hills. And this is the paradox of America, that it has more meaning before you get there than it does when you're there, because then you're dealing with the prosaic daily realities of the place. Once again, this is a novel with sex in it. There is the man who says, call me Ishmael. Notice he didn't say, I am Ishmael, that's my name. He says, call me Ishmael, another indeterminate name. He gets into what's called the marriage bed with Queequeg, the supposed cannibal harpooner. Already a kind of mixing of races, a mock marriage. Later on, when they're capturing the whale, they're kneading the spermaceti, the sperm of the whale. Gee, just imagine that in the English novel in the 19th century, it shaped them rigid. And America's gone on performing that function. Philip Roth did it in spades. John Updike did it, talking about things that you wouldn't find in the English novel, frank kind of sexuality. The theatre, Arthur Miller and Tennessee Williams brought us sexuality. That was the charge that came off them. And when people think, well, what's American about American literature? Actually, there are a lot of very distinctive things about them. Moby Dick, there is no end to Moby Dick. It's a book you can read and reread. The other fascination is nobody liked it when it was published. This book was only sort of rediscovered in the 20th century. And now it's like this great rock that you can't get around. Whether you like it or not, there is Melville, there is Moby Dick, blocking your way. And better actually embrace it. Oh, since we're on the top of the mountain, really, this is somebody you have to tackle. You have to climb the steep sides of Moby Dick. And there are enormous rewards. And rich language. He was overwhelmed by the Bible and Shakespeare at the time. And they flood through the text. He's talking about evil, he's talking about goodness. And who do we as readers side with? Is it the mad Ahab who ventures out into the deeps in pursuit of something? Or is it Starbuck, his mate, who is married and who wants to keep close to the shore and the domestic world? Which is America? Is it that safe, settled place, the white picket fence, family, Central American icon? Or is it the risk, the possibility, the new, the dangerous? And it's a novel which leaves you asking that question.
Do you think we should hear a few lines from the great American novel?
Well, the few lines I would have been tempted to read would actually be not from the main body of the thing, but from that prelude that I was talking about. It begins, as I say, and incidentally, this book was dedicated to Nathaniel Hawthorne. These people all live close to one another. I mean, if you go to Concord to this day, it's quite an amazing little town where you will find Louisa May Alcott, Hawthorne, Channing, all of these people side by side. A piece of paper could have blown out of Hawthorne's window.
Concord, Massachusetts.
I know
it well. My son went to school.
Oh, right. Well, and into the window of Ralph Waldo Emerson. And there is Walden Pond with Thoreau.
Yes.
Thoreau working away by the pond when he's not sneaking back to have a free meal from Ralph Waldo Emerson. But what a place. I mean, I can't think of anywhere, such a small place in which such talent was concentrated and at the same time. So they knew one another. It actually begins with etymology supplied by a late consumptive usher to a grammar school. Now, if I told you, or anybody, that this is actually a funny book at times, they wouldn't believe me. But it actually begins with a series of, effectively, jokes. So there is this pale usher, threadbare, in coat, heart, body and brain. I see him now. He was ever dusting his old lexicons and grammars with a queer handkerchief, mockingly embellished with all the gay flags of all the known nations of the world. He loved to dust his old grammars. It somehow mildly reminded him of his mortality. And then we're into the etymology, and then we're into the extract supplied by a sub-librarian. So he has this wonderful, jokey, lateral approach. You have no idea what you're walking into in this novel. And then, finally, the line that everyone thinks starts the novel. Call me Ishmael. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse and nothing particular to interest me on shore, I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world. And that's the beginning of the main body of a quite amazing book, which you can read over and over. Which I'm going to have to do, evidently.
So, Christopher, what is your final book?
Well, it's a strange book, really, and I don't have it in front of me. It's a book called The Corner. And it's by a journalist who worked for the Baltimore Sun, and a man called Ed Burns, who was a former detective who worked for the Baltimore Police Department. Now, that's going to sound very strange. It doesn't sound like American literature, really. But its significance is this. It was the second of two books. The first one was called Homicide, Life on the Killing Streets. Homicide, Life on the Killing Streets was a study of the Baltimore Police Department. The Corner was a study of the drug traffic in Baltimore. The corners were where the drug traffickers stood, on the corner of blocks to sell drugs. Both of these led to television shows. The first one led to Homicide, Life on the Streets. They left the word killing out. A first-class series. The second one led, first of all, to a short series called The Corner, in which people with the same name as actual drug addicts, but performed by actors, took you into a quasi-documentary. But the other series came from it was The Wire. The Wire, to me, is probably the best television drama series that has been on American television. Well, I was going to say since, but I forget the since. Probably the best there has been. And the same people have gone on to make another series called Treme now, which is set in New Orleans after the hurricane. Why is it so good? Although it's about drug addicts, that's only the immediate issue. What it does in series after series is look at aspects of inner city Baltimore. Yes, at crime, but then at education, then at politics, then into the world of the media. It exposes that other America, the America you really do not see on television for much of the time. With some brilliant writing, brilliant acting. They pulled in writers who would normally write novels. And they described this series in terms of the 19th century episodic novel, Dickens. Yes. That's what it was. Or if you want another image, it will be Conrad's Heart of Darkness. It's a series that takes you into the heart of darkness, the darkness which is inner city America, which is like another world. It's like an America within an America. So it is actually a riveting book to read, very powerful, beautifully written, but to me its significance is maybe less the book itself than what it generated. And coming from Britain, which always liked to think of itself as producing quality television, while America produced schlock, this situation has completely reversed itself. In the last 10 years, the best television drama, without a doubt, has come from this country, beginning maybe with The Sopranos, and running through The Corner, The West Wing, again written by very good people, brought from the theatre as well as from the world of the novel. It'll surprise you, Battlestar Galactica, which is a space fiction series, but which again looks at, it's kind of model of American society that has been attacked by Cylons.
And these have all had quite a cult following, The Wire,
They've had it, yeah.
X-Files.
But you're right to say cult, because the strange thing about these series is they've picked up awards, but they've had a very small viewing figures. Even when they were brought over to Europe, they tended to be on small channels until recently. Then the BBC did move The Wire over.
Very late at night.
Yes, late at night. So yes, cult maybe is the word, but some transformation has been carried out that makes America suddenly a creator of first-class drama. Is partly the existence of HBO. But The West Wing wasn't produced by HBO, it was produced by NBC. Mm-hmm. And NBC has also produced some of the finest comedy, Frasier and so on, come from NBC. So it's a bit of a trick choosing this book in a way, because I would recommend that people read the book, called The Corner, but I would also recommend they go down and get the DVDs, because they have an amazing treat, some brilliant acting, including by an actor that I didn't even know was English. And increasingly, English actors pop up in American drama series with, as far as I can detect, perfect English American accents. And so I would, first of all, read the book, then I would see the DVDs.
Well, now, Christopher, you are not going to be able to watch DVDs.
No, there is a difficulty about that on the top of a mountain, isn't there? I'd forgotten all about that.
Unfortunately, this won't be possible, but I am going to allow you one luxury. And that is a piece of American music to which you can listen while you're reading these books. What will it be?
Well, I would like to have Old Man River, but Old Man River sung by Paul Robeson, because I'm a great admirer of Paul Robeson. And Showboat, which is the musical from which it came, and I'm very interested in showboats because I'm interested in theatre. But there's a man who was there at the birth of the modern American theatre. He's with Eugene O'Neill in O'Neill's early plays. He in Showboat, which is a musical which put blacks and whites on stage at the same time in a musical for the first time. It's a show about miscegenation. And he went on to a wonderful career. He had his passport withdrawn, he had to suffer through House Un-American Activities Committee, and he gave them hell. He's a man who stood up to the House Un-American Activities Committee and ridiculed them. But he's a great singer, he played Othello, lovely. I have another reason, however, and that is there's somebody else who sang Old Man River, and I suspect that when it's played, people wouldn't know who this is.
He don't plant cotton and don't plant gators, and them that plant them are soon forgotten. But Old Man River, he just keeps rolling along.
Well, the reason they wouldn't know who that was is because it's the author of Death of a Salesman and The Crucible. It's Arthur Miller. So we're back where we started this conversation, because early on, he wanted to be a crooner.
Oh, yes.
He wanted to be Sinatra. And he did have a radio program briefly with an old man, as he said, with dandruff, who played the piano. And eventually he gave that up. But he loved music, he loved singing. He didn't play the piano. His mother had been a lover of musicals, and that's really what inspired him to be interested in music. And he, in the late 1930s, beginning of the 1940s, he worked briefly for the Library of Congress and was sent down to Wilmington, Delaware, to make some recordings. While he was there, he came across a strike of people in a shirt factory, and they were mostly black workers. And he was so fascinated by the songs they were singing, many of which they had made up. And there were some beautiful voices, and he recorded it from the Library of Congress. 4, 5 decades, can't remember, 6 decades after that, I interviewed him. And I'd heard these songs, and I said to him, there was this beautiful music this woman sang. He said, yes, and he started singing. And 60 years on, he'd remembered the words, he'd remembered the music.
Christopher, thank you very much for being on our Untersberg.
Not at all. A great pleasure.